My grandpa gave me a fake check as a joke. Everyone laughed, except me. The next day, the bank didn't laugh either. Let me tell you what really happened. I promise, it's a story you won't forget. I'm Amira Cole, 24, Nigerian American, and I grew up in a quiet suburb in Alabama. Life has never been easy for me. I've worked long hours at a local cafe, saving every penny just to make ends meet. So when my birthday came around this year, I was just hoping for a simple weekend with my family. I didn't expect anything big, and honestly, I didn't even want attention. The day started normally. I walked into my grandparents' living room, and there he was, Grandpa Isaiah, sitting in his favorite armchair, that mischievous glint in his eyes. He handed me a card, and inside was a check. I blinked. It was for $250,000. Written on old, yellowed paper, it had a little note scribbled at the bottom. Don't spend it all in one place. My parents, Sandra and Lionel, burst into laughter. They thought it was just another one of Grandpa's pranks. I forced a smile too, but deep down, I felt embarrassed. I've been struggling financially, and seeing that huge number made me feel exposed, like my problems were on display. I laughed nervously, hoping they'd drop it. But Grandpa's smile didn't fade. He leaned back and said, "Happy birthday, Amira. Just a little fun." The night passed with jokes and teasing. My parents kept making playful comments, and Grandpa added a few more quips about my sudden millionaire status. I went to bed that night with a strange mix of amusement and irritation. The prank stung more than I wanted to admit. The next morning, I was still thinking about the check when my phone rang. It was my bank. Confused, I answered. "Ms. Cole," the voice said. "Your account, the check you deposited yesterday, it cleared." I froze. That had to be a mistake. The check was fake, or so I thought. I hadn't even taken it seriously, and suddenly my modest savings account showed an extra $250,000. My heart raced. I called Grandpa immediately, my voice shaky. "Grandpa, what did you do?" He chuckled, low and knowing. "Maybe it's time you learned a little lesson, Amira." I hung up, my mind spinning. My parents, who had laughed just the night before, suddenly seemed curious, even excited. "Withdraw it before they fix it," my mom whispered. I didn't know if they were joking or serious, but a chill ran down my spine. That's when I realized something was changing. What started as a harmless prank had turned into something I couldn't ignore. The fake check wasn't just a joke. It was the beginning of a story I was about to live, and nothing would ever be the same. I couldn't believe my eyes. My bank account showed $250,000. I stared at the numbers over and over, convinced it had to be a mistake. I had held that fake check in my hand just yesterday, laughed awkwardly at my family, and now my life seemed to have flipped upside down overnight. I grabbed my jacket and rushed to the bank, my mind racing with questions I couldn't even begin to answer. When I arrived, I was greeted by Mr. Darrell Benson, the branch manager, a tall man with a serious expression and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Ms. Cole," he said, motioning me to a chair. "We've looked into the deposit. The check is legitimate. It cleared this morning." "Legitimate?" I echoed, my voice trembling. "But it was a joke. My grandfather gave it to me as a prank." Mr. Benson shook his head slowly. "It's drawn from an old private account in your grandfather's name. Everything is in order. There's no error on our side." I felt my stomach drop. A prank that turned into reality? That didn't make any sense. There had to be some banking glitch, some hidden error. But everything he said sounded official, confirmed by signatures, account numbers, and the bank's secure system. My heart raced, part fear and part excitement, but mostly confusion. I immediately called Grandpa Isaiah. The line clicked, and his voice came through, calm and deliberate. "Amira," he said, "maybe it's time I even the score." I frowned, not understanding what he meant. "Grandpa, the check, it cleared. How is this even possible?" He chuckled softly, almost teasingly, and then the line went quiet, leaving me with even more questions. Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. It was like he had planned all of this, but why? Then came my parents. Just yesterday, they had laughed at me, the poor little girl, who thought she'd ever hold such a sum. But today they were different. They hovered near me at the kitchen table, voices low, eyes sharp. "You need to withdraw it," my mom whispered, "before the bank realizes what's going on and takes it back." My dad nodded in agreement. "Don't wait. Move it now while you still can." I felt a chill run down my spine. Their laughter from yesterday had vanished. Now their curiosity had turned into urgency, almost greed. The family I trusted seemed to have shifted overnight, and I realized I wasn't the same person they thought I was. Something about that check had changed everything, and suddenly, the prank felt like the first step into a world I wasn't prepared for. I left the bank that day, clutching my phone and the strange sense of unease, knowing that what started as a joke had opened a door to secrets, tests, and perhaps betrayal I couldn't yet see. My life was no longer simple, and I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. Almost as soon as the news about the check spread, my parents started showing up at my apartment unannounced. At first, they acted casual, dropping by with snacks or asking about my day, but soon their questions became pointed. "Have you thought about using any of that money yet?" my mom asked, her tone unusually sharp. "You've worked hard, but don't forget we helped raise you." I felt a tight knot in my chest. Their laughter from just a few days ago had vanished, replaced by this new, calculating curiosity. I kept my answers vague, telling them I was still figuring things out, but it didn't stop them from pressing. Every visit seemed to carry an unspoken expectation that I would hand over part of the money, or at least give them some control over it. One evening, Dion, my older brother, came over. He usually had a relaxed, easygoing attitude, joking about everything from car repairs to old family stories. But this time, he leaned in, voice low, and warned me. "Amira, I know it's your parents, but be careful. Don't trust anyone. Sometimes it's the people closest to you who surprise you the most." I nodded, unsure whether he was exaggerating or seeing something I couldn't. My instincts told me to hold back, not to touch the money, and not to reveal how much I actually had. Something about the sudden attention and change in my parents' behavior felt wrong. The excitement that had come with the check was fading, replaced by tension and suspicion. That night, my phone rang. Grandpa Isaiah's familiar, steady voice came through. "Amira, you'll see who they really are when they think you have something they want," he said. The line went silent after that, leaving me staring at the dark ceiling. His words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of something bigger than a simple birthday surprise. Within days, the subtle hints turned into pressure. My parents began reminding me of every favor, every sacrifice they claimed to have made while raising me. "You should be grateful for everything we've done," my mom said one afternoon, her voice tight with expectation. "It's only fair that you share some of it." I felt anger bubbling up inside me. I had worked hard, lived my life honestly, and this sudden fortune was mine. I refused to give in. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I earned this and it's mine. I won't be bullied into handing it over." That's when the real tension began. The smiles faded, the visits became longer, the questions sharper. Their true colors were starting to show, and I realized that what had begun as a simple prank from Grandpa had now become a test of character for all of us. I could feel the betrayal looming, and for the first time, I understood Grandpa's warning. Family could be the closest allies, or the most dangerous threat. That evening, my parents and Dion invited me to what they called a family dinner. The invitation sounded innocent enough, so I agreed, thinking maybe we could talk things through. But the moment I stepped into the dining room, I could feel the tension. My parents smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach their eyes. Dion sat quietly, shuffling his fork in front of him, eyes flicking between us, like he was waiting for something to happen. The meal started normally enough, pasta, salad, bread. But halfway through, my mom reached across the table and placed a neatly printed document in front of me. I frowned, lifting it slowly. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled, but it was sharp, almost predatory. "It's an agreement, Amira. You'll see it's just to be fair. We think it's only right that you return half of that money to the family." My fork dropped from my hand. I couldn't breathe for a moment. "Return half? You're serious?" My voice cracked with a mix of anger and disbelief. My parents' faces were calm, almost pleased, as if they had rehearsed this moment for weeks. Dion didn't say a word, just stared at me, his eyes warning me to stay calm. I felt a surge of fury. They weren't joking anymore. They had turned on me completely. The family I trusted, the people I grew up with, were now expecting me to hand over something that wasn't theirs, something that wasn't a gift. It was mine. My stomach churned, and I realized that this dinner wasn't about talking. It was about control, manipulation, and testing me. I tried to bring up Grandpa Isaiah, hoping he would intervene or at least provide some support. "Where's Grandpa? Shouldn't he see this?" I asked, my voice tight. My mom waved a hand dismissively. "He's not feeling well. He wouldn't want to get involved." The excuse felt hollow, and a part of me knew better. Grandpa Isaiah had always been sharp, always involved in his family's lives in his own way. I didn't buy their story for a second. The unease in my chest grew heavier. Something wasn't right, and I had a feeling the answers wouldn't come from them. The next morning, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to see Grandpa myself, to understand what was really going on. I drove to his house, heart pounding with worry and suspicion. But when I arrived, the sight that greeted me made my blood run cold. The house was nearly empty. Boxes were stacked haphazardly in the corners, and papers that I knew had been there yesterday were gone. A man I didn't recognize was carefully packing documents into a briefcase. He looked up as I entered, startled, and I realized this wasn't a visit. I had stumbled into something serious. "Can I help you?" the man asked cautiously. I swallowed hard, searching for words. I'm Amira Cole. I came to see my grandfather." "Where is he?" He hesitated, glancing at the boxes. He had some business to handle. "I'm his lawyer, Clarence Rowe. I can explain." I felt my chest tighten. The prank, the money, my family's sudden greed. All of it had led to this moment. Something far bigger was unfolding, and I was standing right in the middle of it. I took a shaky step closer to the man, my eyes scanning the empty living room, the scattered papers, and the boxes stacked in corners. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice firmer than I felt. "What are you doing in my grandfather's house?" He straightened, his suit impeccable, his expression calm but serious. "I'm Clarence Rowe," he said, "your grandfather's lawyer. And you, Amira, are standing in the middle of a carefully planned lesson he left for you." I blinked, trying to process what he said. "Lesson? What do you mean?" Clarence gestured toward a neat stack of papers on a table. "Your grandfather transferred control of a hidden trust account to you just days before your birthday. That check your grandfather gave you, it was real, and he intended for you to have it." My mouth went dry. "You mean the $250,000? All of it?" "It wasn't a joke." Clarence shook his head. "Not a joke. It was a test. Isaiah wanted to see who in his family valued love and integrity over money. He wanted to know who would act with honesty and who would let greed take over." I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't untangle. Honor, fear, confusion. My grandfather had chosen me to inherit something enormous, but he had done it in secret, watching how everyone around me would respond. I thought about my parents' sudden obsession with the money, their veiled hints that I should give them some of it. And now it made sense. He had known all along. I don't know what to say," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I feel honored, but I'm scared. What if I mess this up?" Clarence gave a small, understanding nod. "You won't, but you need to be careful. Your grandfather has always known the family better than anyone. And as you've seen, some people might try to take advantage." I swallowed hard and asked, "Can I see him?" "I need to talk to Grandpa Isaiah myself." Clarence's expression softened, but there was worry there. "He was hospitalized last night. He's stable, but you can't see him yet. He wanted to speak to you, though. That's why he left instructions and documentation here." A cold feeling settled in my chest. I realized just how much responsibility had been placed on me, and how alone I would be navigating this. Meanwhile, Clarence explained that my parents had already begun spreading rumors, trying to make it seem like I had stolen the money. "You need to act carefully," he warned. "They will try to discredit you, but everything here proves the truth." I nodded, gripping the edge of the table. My mind spun with the implications. This was bigger than I had ever imagined. The prank, the check, the sudden attention from my family. It had all been part of my grandfather's plan. I felt a strange mix of gratitude and terror. He had trusted me to act with integrity, and at the same time, he had thrown me into a storm I wasn't fully prepared for. For the first time, I understood that this wasn't just about money. It was about revealing character, testing loyalty, and exposing truth. And now, with the check cleared and the trust account real, I realized I was standing at the very center of my family's greed and their secrets. The real challenge was only just beginning. The next morning, I tried to log into my bank account, but my stomach sank when I saw the message flashing across the screen. Account frozen due to ongoing fraud investigation. My hands shook as I dialed the customer service number, my voice tight with panic. "What do you mean? There's a mistake. That check was given to me by my grandfather." I explained. The bank representative remained professional but firm. "Ma'am, a formal complaint has been filed against you. Until the investigation concludes, all funds are inaccessible." I froze. A complaint? Who could possibly do this? My mind immediately went to my parents. I dialed my mother's number, my throat tight with dread. "Mom, please." I started, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, no answer. A knot formed in my chest. I called Clarence, Grandpa Isaiah's lawyer, hoping he could shed some light. "Clarence, the bank froze my account. What's happening?" He hesitated, then sighed heavily. "Amira, your parents have filed a formal claim against the check. They're saying you forged it. And there's more. Your grandfather is unconscious in the hospital, and they've challenged the will. They're trying to take control of the trust itself." I sank into a chair, feeling the walls close in. My parents, the people who raised me, were now my enemies in the most personal way imaginable. I felt betrayed, cornered, and utterly alone. Everything had shifted overnight. The home I had grown up in, the family I had trusted implicitly, had turned against me the moment they saw an opportunity for wealth. I replayed Grandpa Isaiah's words in my head. "You'll see who they really are when they think you have something they want." It all made sense now. Every subtle hint, every cryptic smile, every careful arrangement in his old house. It wasn't just a prank or a test of patience. He had anticipated their greed, their betrayal, and he had prepared for it. Alone in my apartment, I thought about the clues he left behind. The papers I had found in his house, the USB hidden in the study, the detailed instructions for accessing the trust account. They were all meant for me to discover when the time was right. The prank, the money, the hidden messages, it was a carefully orchestrated plan to teach me about human nature and to equip me to protect what was rightfully mine. The sense of isolation was overwhelming, but beneath it, a spark of determination began to grow. My grandfather had trusted me with the truth, with his legacy, and now it was up to me to navigate the storm he had foreseen. His foresight wasn't just about money. It was about preparing me to face deception and betrayal from those closest to me. I realized then that I wasn't powerless. I had evidence, guidance, and the understanding that everything happening now had been predicted. I could fight back, but I would need patience, careful planning, and a steadfast heart. My parents thought they could manipulate me, take what wasn't theirs, but Grandpa Isaiah had already given me the tools to stand strong. The real test had only just begun, and this time, I wasn't going to fail. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept swirling around the check, my frozen bank account, and the way my family had turned against me. I knew I couldn't wait for answers. I had to find them myself. Quietly, I slipped out of my apartment and drove to Grandpa Isaiah's old house, the one he had lived in for decades, the one now mostly empty. The house was dark and silent, the only sound my footsteps echoing across the wooden floors. I went straight to his study, the room where I had spent hours as a child watching him read, write, and organize his papers. The door creaked slightly as I pushed it open, but I didn't care. I needed to know the truth. I searched carefully, pulling out drawers and scanning shelves, until something unusual caught my eye. A photo frame on the desk looked ordinary at first, but there was a slight gap at the back. My heart raced as I pried it open. Hidden inside was a small USB drive and a folded letter, almost like a secret meant only for me. I took them carefully and sat down at the desk, hands trembling. I unfolded the letter first. Grandpa's familiar handwriting jumped out at me, and as I read, my breath caught in my throat. The $250,000 check wasn't a joke. It was only a fraction of a much larger trust, one he had been building for years. He had deliberately given me that first check to test my character, to see if I would act with integrity or let greed take over. He had known, he wrote, that some people in the family would betray me. He had prepared for this moment, leaving clues, instructions, and evidence to guide me. The realization hit me like a wave. Every joke, every prank, every mysterious instruction he had left wasn't for amusement. It was for truth. Then I plugged in the USB drive, my hands shaking. What I saw made my heart race and my stomach drop. There were recordings, documents, bank statements, and even statements from advisors, all proving that my parents had secretly siphoned money from his accounts for years. Every transaction, every transfer was documented. The evidence was undeniable. I leaned back, letting the weight of it sink in. The prank wasn't a joke. The check, the hidden account, the timing, all of it had been part of a carefully orchestrated plan to reveal the real nature of those around me. My parents' sudden interest in the money, their complaints, their false claims, it had all been predicted, and now I held the proof in my hands. A mix of anger, relief, and awe washed over me. Grandpa Isaiah had outsmarted everyone. He had trusted me to see the truth, to act wisely, and to protect what was rightfully mine. I realized then that I wasn't just holding money. I was holding clarity, evidence, and the power to reveal the real story. The prank had been the first step, but the discovery, the truth, was the real inheritance. And now, I finally understood what Grandpa had always meant. The money wasn't the lesson, it was the revelation of who people really were. With the USB drive and letter in hand, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Clarence, Grandpa Isaiah's lawyer, met me at his office the next morning, and together we began preparing a legal response. Every document, every recording, every statement on that drive would be used to prove the truth. Prove that I hadn't forged anything, and that the check and trust were entirely legitimate. Clarence moved quickly, drafting motions and assembling a case that would stand up in court. Once the paperwork was ready, I contacted the bank's fraud department myself. My voice was steady this time, firm with certainty. I submitted the evidence, showing the trail of the check, the trust documents, and the proof of my parents' years of unauthorized withdrawals. I could hear the change in tone on the other end of the line as the officers reviewed the files. By the end of the call, my name was cleared. The bank verified the legitimacy of the check and confirmed that the frozen account would be fully restored. Relief washed over me, but I knew the fight wasn't over. As word of the evidence reached my parents, I could practically feel the shift in the air. Their calls went unanswered, messages ignored. I learned later that panic had set in. They realized the years of quiet theft were now exposed, linked directly to them. Every transaction, every manipulated statement, every hint of deceit was documented, and they knew it. When the date for the hearing arrived, I felt a strange calm. I had been betrayed, lied to, and attacked by the people I loved most, but now I held the truth. I chose to attend the hearing alone, refusing to warn them or give them a chance to prepare excuses. They would face the consequences of their actions without my interference. The courtroom was tense. My parents sat together, their expressions tight and pale, avoiding my gaze. Clarence and I were ready, armed with the files, recordings, and the letter. When the judge called the case, I stepped forward and played Grandpa Isaiah's final recorded message. His voice filled the room, steady and commanding. "I gave Amira the check on purpose," he said. "I wanted to see who would act with honesty and integrity, and who would let greed take over. This test has revealed the truth about those around her." A gasp echoed through the courtroom. Heads turned, whispers spread, and the judge leaned forward, listening intently. My parents' faces drained of color, their confidence crumbling. They realized in that moment that the truth couldn't be hidden, that the evidence was irrefutable, and that their plan to discredit me had failed. I watched quietly as the room absorbed Isaiah's words. There was no triumphant smile, no gloating. I felt something far more powerful: clarity, justice, and a sense of strength I had never known before. The prank had become the test, and the test had revealed everything. I had stood firm, followed the clues, and faced betrayal with patience and strategy. By the end of the hearing, the judge acknowledged the legitimacy of the trust and the check. My parents sat silently, defeated, and I realized that the battle had shifted. The fight wasn't about money anymore. It was about the truth, and I now held it completely in my hands. The courtroom felt heavy with silence as the judge delivered the final ruling. Every word seemed to echo in my chest. The check, the trust, everything my grandfather had arranged, was confirmed as completely legal. I had won. The trust was mine, the check was mine, and the court had recognized that every action I had taken was justified. Relief washed over me, but it was tinged with sadness. The fight had been long, exhausting, and had exposed the harsh truth about the people I had once trusted the most. News came quickly that my parents were being charged with financial fraud. Years of siphoning money from Grandpa Isaiah's accounts had finally caught up with them. I didn't feel triumph or gloating as I heard the news, only a quiet sense of justice. They had chosen greed over love, and now they would face the consequences. I left the courthouse and made my way to the hospital, my heart heavy. Isaiah had been unconscious when Clarence and I had last spoken. I didn't know if he would recognize me, or if he would even have the strength to speak. Entering the room, I saw him lying in bed, frail, his breathing slow but steady. His eyes opened when he noticed me, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I saw everything," I whispered, stepping closer. He coughed softly, then gestured for me to sit beside him. "You saw them for who they were," he murmured, his voice weak but clear. "That's your inheritance, Amira. Truth, not money." Tears blurred my vision. I reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. Grandpa, I couldn't have done this without you. He squeezed my hand, a small, reassuring pressure. You did it on your own, child. I only left the path. You followed it. His eyes softened, and for a moment the room felt calm, despite everything that had happened. I cried quietly, letting the emotions I had held back for weeks pour out. I cried for the family I had lost, for the trust that had been broken, and for the betrayal that had cut so deeply. But I also cried for the strength I had discovered within myself, the courage to face lies, deceit, and greed without losing my sense of integrity. He gave a faint smile, eyes fluttering closed as he rested back against the pillows. I'm proud of you, Amira. Always remember, it's the truth that matters. I stayed by his side, holding his hand, feeling the weight of everything that had passed, and the calm of knowing the fight was finally over. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the steady hum of machines and the soft beeping of monitors. And then, peacefully, Isaiah drifted away, his hand still in mine, a faint smile lingering on his lips. I sat there long after the monitors stopped, letting the silence sink in. The storm with my family was over, the battle for justice had been fought and won, and yet the real inheritance remained: wisdom, clarity, and the unshakable truth of who loved me and who only loved what I had. It was a gift far greater than money, and one I vowed to honor every day of my life. Weeks after the courtroom battle, I found myself standing in front of Grandpa Isaiah's small Alabama house. The air was crisp, and the familiar scent of pine and earth brought back memories of childhood afternoons spent helping him in the garden or listening to his quiet wisdom in the evenings. The house had been left entirely to me, along with the trust he had built over decades. I stepped inside slowly, taking in the worn floors, the faded wallpaper, and the sunlight spilling across the furniture. Everything felt heavier now, but not in a sad way, more like the weight of responsibility, of something valuable entrusted to me not just in money, but in meaning. Clarence had explained the full extent of the trust. Over $3 million. All mine. The sheer number could have been intoxicating, but instead, I felt a strange calm. This wasn't about triumph or revenge. It was about choice, and for the first time, I could see clearly what mattered. Sitting at the kitchen table, I reread Isaiah's final letter. His words were simple, but they carried a depth I could feel in my chest. Sometimes a fake check is the only way to see who's real. I let the words sink in, realizing just how much he had taught me. Not about money, but about truth, loyalty, and discernment. Everything had been a test, a path to understanding human nature and the value of integrity. I thought about my parents, about the betrayal, about the storm of greed and lies that had consumed our family. I felt a pang of sadness for what had been lost, but it was softened by a quiet pride. I had stayed true to myself, followed Isaiah's guidance, and come out not just unbroken, but stronger. In the following days, I began putting plans into motion. The house, which had been a sanctuary for my grandfather, became a project for the future. I used a portion of the trust to rebuild it, not as a lavish estate, but as a safe space for struggling students, a place where they could study, sleep, and find support when life seemed too heavy. Watching workers repair the floors and paint the walls, I felt a deep connection to Isaiah, as though I was extending his kindness and wisdom to the next generation. Evenings were the quietest, the moments I cherished most. I would sit by the window, looking out at the yard where I had once played as a child, now imagining the students who would one day run across the lawn, carrying books and hope. The house no longer felt like a reminder of loss or betrayal. It felt like the fulfillment of purpose, a legacy not measured in dollars, but in impact. I picked up the letter again, reading Isaiah's words aloud softly, almost as a prayer. Sometimes a fake check is the only way to see who's real. I smiled, thinking of the journey, the tests, and the revelations. I wasn't rich in the way people measure wealth, but I was rich in understanding, in freedom, and in clarity. I leaned back, looking out the window one last time that evening. The sun dipped low, casting golden light across the yard. I was calm, neither rich nor poor, neither triumphant nor bitter, but finally entirely free. The real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the truth, the lessons, and the strength I had found along the way. And that, I realized, was priceless. Do you think Amira handled everything the right way by standing up to her family and protecting her grandfather's legacy? Or should she have tried to forgive them? Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. And if stories like this inspire you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.